The day of our family photo shoot was supposed to be perfect. The kind of crisp winter afternoon that looks beautiful in pictures, rosy cheeks, matching outfits, everyone gathered together pretending that everything was fine. My 6-year-old daughter Julia wore a pale yellow dress dotted with little daisies. She had spent the whole morning twirling in it, asking me over and over if she looked pretty. She did. She looked absolutely radiant. She sat in the front row, her small hand tucked into her cousin Jessie's for courage, her smile wide and unguarded the way only a child's smile can be. She had no idea that smile would be erased before Christmas morning arrived. When the Christmas cards came back from the printer, my mother opened the box like she'd just received a museum delivery. She held one up to the light, admiring the glossy finish, the clean composition, the perfectly arranged family portrait. "Look at these," she said, beaming. "The colors look so clean this year." Julia darted forward the way she always did, eager, excited, desperate to feel included. She loved photos. She loved anything that made her feel like she truly belonged. Her little fingers grabbed a card before I could react. Her smile faded almost instantly. She tilted her head, squinting at the image. Her eyes traveled across the front row, Jessie and Ryan grinning in their polished shoes and gel-stiffened hair. Aunt Becky and her husband Jason posed like a magazine cover, Grandma and Grandpa with their stiff, dutiful smiles. Everyone was there. Everyone except Julia. She wasn't cropped out. She wasn't hidden behind someone taller. She was simply gone, as if she had never stood there at all, as if she had never existed in that family photograph, or perhaps in that family. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was so small it nearly broke me in half. I leaned in closer, my chest tightening. I reached for another card, hopping, praying that this was just one misprint, one strange error. Julia grabbed another card herself. Then another and another, her small hands moving faster, her breathing quickening with each one she flipped through. "But I was there," she whispered. "I sat in the front row, I remember." Every single card was the same. Julia erased, Julia removed, Julia made to disappear. For half a second, I clung to denial. Maybe it was a printer glitch. Maybe the file got corrupted. But then I saw it, the telltale signs of deliberate editing. The floorboards behind Jessie had been copied and pasted where Julia's shoes had been. A shadow was smudged and stretched unnaturally across the front row. The curve of Jessie's hand was cut strangely, like it had once been resting on a shoulder that was no longer there. This was not a mistake. Someone had paid to have my daughter removed from the family portrait. That takes effort. That takes time. That takes money. And whoever did it had invested all three into making sure a 6-year-old girl felt like she didn't belong. Julia's hands began trembling. She flipped faster, still searching, still hopping. "Maybe I'm hiding," she whispered. "Maybe I'm too small. Maybe I'm behind someone." Her voice cracked on the last word. She dropped the cards onto the table. Her wide, beautiful eyes filled with tears. And then came the question, the one that shattered something inside me that I don't think has ever fully healed. Why am I not in any of them? I pulled her against me and felt her shoulders shaking. She is 6 years old. She should not know what it feels like to be deliberately erased. She should not have to scan photo after photo looking for proof that she exists. She should not have to ask why her family didn't want her face in their Christmas cards. But she knew now, and I couldn't take that knowledge away from her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip every single one of those glossy, perfect lies in half and throw them across the room. Instead, I kept my voice even and my jaw tight, because some silences are louder than any outburst could ever be. Across the room, my mother adjusted a card on the mantel as if nothing in the world was wrong. "The colors are so clean this year," she repeated, almost to herself. My phone buzzed. A message in the family group chat from my sister Becky. "Finally looks uniform." Uniform? My daughter was a stain they had scrubbed out, a smudge they had corrected, an imperfection in their otherwise polished family portrait. My father cleared his throat. "We just wanted it tidy," he muttered. My mother sighed in that particular way she had, as if she were explaining something painfully obvious to someone far too slow to understand. We all talked about it, me, Dad, and Becky. We agreed it was better this way. Her dress didn't match. She stood out. It ruined the picture. It's not personal. Julia's lips trembled. Her cheeks went blotchy red, but she didn't cry in front of them. She was braver than any of us deserved. The silence that followed was suffocating. I held her tighter and made a promise to myself, a cold, sharp, unbreakable promise. This would be the last time they erased my daughter. The investment and the labor. To understand why that moment happened, you have to understand the family I grew up in. Becky was always the investment. I was always the labor. It started small, the way these things usually do. Becky got piano lessons. I got a mop. Becky had soccer practice 3 nights a week. I scrubbed the kitchen floor. By the time we reached high school, the pattern wasn't even subtle anymore. It was simply the architecture of our family, and everyone had accepted it without question. When our grandmother's knees started giving her trouble, the phone always rang for me. Megan, help her upstairs. Megan, make sure she eats. Megan, sit with her tonight. Becky's excuse was always the same. Her schedule was too full. Of course it was. Becky's schedule was sacred. Mine was just available. I asked once, just once, if I could join the school drama club. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. Becky already has 3 activities. Do you want to drain us dry? My mother smirked. You learn plenty of lessons cleaning the house. So that was my childhood. Becky, polished and presented and invested in. Me, invisible, useful, expendable. When Becky married Jason, my parents acted as though she had won an Olympic gold medal simply for saying I do. They gifted her and Jason a substantial down payment for their first house. Then they covered new furniture. Then kitchen renovations. Then more renovations. I watched it all from the sidelines, silent, bitter, and honestly a little amused at the sheer transparency of it. So when I fell in love in my 20s, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe now, I thought, maybe now they'll see me as more than a housemaid with a pulse. They didn't. His name doesn't matter now. Let's just call him the disappearing act. We dated for a couple of years and were talking seriously about moving in together. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, carefully, cautiously, asking my parents for help. Not a house deposit, not renovations, not even furniture. Just a little help with rent while we found our footing. My mother's response was flat and immediate. You don't need it. Stay here. There's space. What she meant was, stay here, keep cooking, keep cleaning, keep helping Grandma, stay useful. I swallowed the bitterness, smiled, and moved out anyway. We found a tiny flat, barely big enough for the 2 of us, rent eating half our paychecks, furniture secondhand and lopsided. But freedom doesn't require matching curtains. I still came back regularly, old habits, and genuine love for my grandmother. I helped her with meals, kept her company, made sure she was cared for in ways my parents never quite managed. And during that time, I got pregnant. The timing wasn't perfect, but I allowed myself to hope again. Maybe a baby would finally make them see me, see us. They didn't. I asked softly, then directly. Could you help us with rent just for a while? It's genuinely hard right now. My father shook his head, already irritated by the question. We don't have money for that. A week later, Becky received new furniture, paid for in full by my parents. The disappearing act held on for a year and a half after Julia was born. Then he announced he'd been accepted into a master's program out of state. He promised we'd stay in touch. 2 months later, he had a new girlfriend. Julia was still 1 year old. I was completely alone, and I couldn't keep the flat on my salary alone, so I packed our entire lives into boxes and moved back home. I told myself it would be temporary. I told myself it would be fine. I was wrong on both counts. My childhood bedroom had been renovated during my absence. Fresh paint, new curtains, toys stacked neatly in the corner, and above the bed in glitter letters, Ryan's name, my nephew's name. Ryan, who didn't even live there, who only visited sometimes. My room had been transformed into a shrine for Becky's son. Becky's own childhood room sat untouched down the hall, preserved like a time capsule, every poster and keepsake exactly where she'd left them years ago. Julia and I were given the attic. Sloped ceilings that scraped my knuckles every time I changed the sheets. Drafts in winter, sweltering heat in summer. 2 beds jammed side by side, barely enough room to stand between them. "It's fine," my mother said when I protested. "Ryan needs his own space when he visits. You'll be fine up there." So I carried the boxes upstairs. Every creak of those attic floorboards was a reminder. You don't belong. You are beneath everyone else in this house. Julia was too young to notice at first, but children grow fast. By the time she was 6, she noticed everything. Jesse and Ryan each had 2 bedrooms, one at home, one here. Julia had none. "Why do I share with you?" she asked me quietly one night. "Why don't I have my own room?" I smoothed her hair and told her it was temporary. I lied, because the truth was that nearly every paycheck I earned went straight back into the household: food, bills, the contributions I was expected to make simply for the privilege of living in my own childhood home. I tried to save. It was never enough. And every time Julia asked why she didn't have what her cousins had, it cut a little deeper. People assume cruelty has to be loud. Screaming, shouting, things breaking. But sometimes cruelty is perfectly quiet. It's a decision to fund one daughter's house and deny the other rent money. It's a glitter name above a door where your grandchild's crib should be. It's the word fine tossed at someone being pushed into an attic. That silence is louder than yelling has ever been. And what had started with me was now being aimed at Julia, my daughter, a child who had done absolutely nothing wrong except exist in a family that had decided she didn't fit their picture. I was not going to let them erase her the way they had erased me. Grandma's move. I couldn't sleep that night. Julia dozed beside me, clutching her stuffed bunny, her breathing finally slow and even. I lay awake staring at water stains on the attic ceiling while the old beams creaked around me, as if the house itself wanted to remind me of my place. I pulled out my phone and opened a message to a friend who worked at a bar downtown. She'd mentioned before that they were always short on night staff. My thumbs moved before I could second-guess myself. "Do you still need night staff? I'll take the shifts." Sent. It was reckless. I already worked days while Julia was in school, and nights were supposed to be for rest. But I couldn't rest in that attic. Not after watching my daughter cry over those Christmas cards. If running myself into the ground was what it took to protect her, then so be it. I was done waiting for scraps from people who had never planned to feed me. I crept down the hall to my grandmother's room. A soft glow spilled under her door. I knocked gently and stepped in. She was propped against her pillows, glasses perched on her nose, working through a crossword puzzle sharp as ever, despite everything. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked without looking up. I sat on the edge of her bed and pulled one of the Christmas cards from my pocket. I handed it to her without a word. She studied it carefully, her brow furrowing, and then she saw it. The absence, Julia's absence. Her mouth pressed into a thin, hard line. "Julia was there," I said. "Yes," I said flatly. "Front row, yellow dress, but apparently yellow doesn't match the uniform they wanted." She set the card down on her blanket with a slow, deliberate sigh. I told her my plan then: the night shifts, the bartending job, the hours I was willing to sacrifice. "I can't keep her here," I said. My voice cracked on the last word. "Not when they treat her like this. I'll work nights, save every penny I can, and we'll move out." Grandma looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were sharp and clear in the lamplight. Finally, she said, very quietly, "You won't need to do that." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She shook her head and turned back to her crossword. "Just leave it with me." The next morning, I found a small, neatly wrapped box sitting on the living room table among the leftover Christmas decorations. I hadn't seen it there the night before. My mother spotted it before I could reach it. "Oh, how sweet, a gift from Grandma." She smirked, peeling back the ribbon like she was unwrapping something she was already certain she deserved. She lifted the lid. Her smile collapsed. She pulled out a stack of papers, skimmed them, froze. The color drained from her face completely. "What is this?" she hissed. Then louder to everyone in the room, "What the hell is this? Is this some kind of joke?" My father stepped closer to read over her shoulder. His mouth fell open. I leaned forward, my heart hammering. I caught a glimpse of the header on the top sheet. Legal formatting, official seals. Not a joke. The hallway creaked. Grandma entered, slow, steady, and accompanied by the lawyer I recognized from her room the previous night. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "It's not a joke," she said calmly. "That is an eviction notice, and I've already changed my will. Megan and Julia will have this house. You will get nothing." Silence detonated in the room. My mother sputtered. My father stared at the papers as if he expected them to combust. Julia gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. I couldn't move. Then the shouting started. My mother's voice cracked high and wild. "You can't do this. You're not in your right mind." My father tried a different angle, smoother, almost pleading. "Think about what you're saying. Think about the family." Grandma didn't flinch. "I am thinking about the family. I'm thinking about the child you tried to erase." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Everything was drafted correctly, witnessed, and signed. It stands." My father's knees nearly buckled. And me? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all these years of being invisible, erased, shoved into attics, silenced, treated as labor instead of a daughter, it wasn't me who had finally screamed loud enough to be heard. It was Grandma, and she had chosen us. I met Julia's eyes. She was still clutching my hand, her face pale. But for the first time in days, I saw something in her expression that wasn't confusion or pain. Hope. The tide turns. My parents didn't go quietly. The chaos swelled, accusations thrown like confetti, voices overlapping. "Megan manipulated you. She poisoned you against us. This is elder abuse." Grandma's laugh cut through it all. "The only abuse in this house is what you've done to her and that child." My mother's mouth snapped shut. A week later, when the shock had settled into cold calculation, they circled me in the kitchen. "You'll regret this," my mother hissed. "We'll make sure they take Julia away from you. You think you're safe, you're not." I didn't flinch, but Julia heard every word from where she sat on the stairs, clutching her stuffed bunny, her eyes wide with fear. That was the last straw. Grandma called her lawyer the next morning. By noon, 2 police officers stood in the doorway while my parents packed clothes into suitcases. No screaming, no dragging, just the mechanical sound of zippers and the quiet snap of a folder as an officer handed them a no-contact order. "You'll have to find somewhere else," Grandma said coldly, "and you will leave Megan and Julia alone." They left under police supervision. That night, Julia slept through until morning without waking once. Her first full, unbroken night's sleep in weeks. 6 months later. Word travels fast in families, especially broken ones. A cousin called me, half whispering like she was passing on classified information. My parents had gone to Becky for help. I nearly dropped the phone. Becky, the golden child, the one they had poured every resource and every hope into for 30 years, told them it wasn't a good time. Money's tight. Money was tight. After a house deposit, renovations, furniture, and years of financial investment, their golden child couldn't spare them a dime when they needed it most. I probably shouldn't have laughed. I did anyway. By the end of the month, the whispers had grown louder. Someone had seen them near a shelter. Later, someone mentioned a dingy rental in a rough part of town. The people who had once treated their daughters so differently had ended up in exactly the same place, and neither daughter was there to help them. Home. Meanwhile, Julia and I live downstairs with Grandma. Julia has her own room now. The walls are painted soft yellow, her choice. Every evening, she decorates them with new drawings. Flowers, animals, made-up creatures with big eyes and wiggly legs. In the mornings, I watch Grandma beam at her over breakfast, looking at her the way every child deserves to be looked at, like she is precious, like she matters, like she is exactly where she belongs. We are not rich. We are not glamorous. Our lives are ordinary in all the best ways. But for the first time, we are safe. For the first time, we are seen. For the first time, we are a real, whole, unbroken family. And nobody will ever erase my daughter again. So, what do you think? Did Grandma go too far, or did she do exactly what needed to be done? Share your thoughts below.